I guess if you think about it, the fact that the timeline of this show is taking bold steps forwards at all times chronologically while looking exclusively backwards, it essentially is the theatrical equivalent of a moonwalk. Oh my god, hey, welcome back to my theatre-themed YouTube channel. My name is Mickey Joe and I'm obsessed with all things theatre. I'm a professional theatre critic here on social media, and this is my theatre-themed YouTube channel, where I make long-form extended video reviews about the shows that I have been invited to go and see. And today we are going to be talking all about one of the West End's most recent new musical openings, a transfer from Broadway, MJ the Musical. Of course, a biopic jukebox musical about the life of the late King of Pop, Michael Jackson, using his own celebrated and beloved discography. This is not the first musical to do so. This is not the first musical in the West End to do so. Thriller Live ran at the Lyric Theatre in London for years and years and years. I never got the chance to see it, but I had heard really great things about MJ, even separate to the Michael Jackson of it all. I'd heard that just like the composition of the numbers and the choreography was really impressive, and so I was excited to see that. At the same time, however, and I will say this right up front, I had my misgivings, I guess, and concerns because this was a musical about Michael Jackson, who is not an uncomplicated figure, very much a polarizing figure within the music industry, criticized by many, loved by others, and there is plenty of weight on both sides of this because the love that there is for Michael Jackson and for his music is incredibly intense and incredibly strong, and the criticism that there is of a whole host of things, but in particular inappropriate and endangering relationships he may have had with young guests at his home Neverland Ranch during his lifetime, comes with an awful lot of heavily documented fact. And so with all of that in the background, I do find this to be a difficult musical to enjoy personally. And I say that as someone who doesn't feel as though I particularly have a horse in the race. I haven't watched the Leaving Neverland documentary. I understand it to be challenging and persuasive. I also have never had that strong a personal connection to the music of Michael Jackson. I think there's a lot of really great and iconic music, and you know, I've attained a level of respect for him as a performer having watched this show, but I still don't really know how to feel about all of it. And even just me saying that, I know is going to invoke some strong feelings in the comment section of this video, but that is my personal stance on the MJ of it all. And it's also only one component of my job here, which is to review the piece of theatre. So I'm also going to be telling you about that, but you will come to understand why the reputation of Michael Jackson continues to be a factor in this show. It sort of haunts the thing. In any case, I'm going to be letting you know all of my thoughts about this production, about the performances, Tony Award winner Myles Frost reprising his performance as Michael Jackson in the show's West End run, also which moment of the show was a standout that really won me over, what I enjoy about the material, what I don't like as much about the material. All of that is to come in today's video review. Now, if you enjoy this one, make sure to subscribe to my theatre-themed YouTube channel for oh so many more video reviews coming very soon of all of your favourite West End and Broadway shows. That's right, I travel. If you enjoy my theatre content, you can also find more of it on Instagram and TikTok, and if you have been to see MJ the Musical already, either at the Prince Edward Theatre in the West End or on Broadway, then comment down below with what you think about the show. For now though, let me tell you what this MJ, that's Mickey Joe, thought of this one. So, I'm not going to give you context on who Michael Jackson was because I kind of assume that everybody knows. What I will tell you is that the musical focuses on a very specific chapter of his life, a very deliberately specific chapter of his life. It is set, I guess, in 1992, before the start of the Dangerous World Tour. At this point, he's already hugely successful. Thriller has already happened. He's already attained a certain level of success, but he's getting ready to embark on this new world tour, which is going to be unprecedented in its showmanship and stagecraft, and he keeps adding all of these new, very complicated, very expensive elements to it because he isn't satisfied with doing something threadbare or half-assed. He wants it to be circus levels of spectacle. He's working with a partially new team, having fired some of the people who he was previously working with. They are getting more and more stressed about the finances of all of this, about this very complex rehearsal process that he is running as the start of the tour is looming. Everyone keeps trying to convey to him that he's spending too much money and that this is a huge risk. And to complicate matters, an MTV film crew has also been invited into the rehearsal room to capture the process of putting this tour together. But the hard-hitting, scoop-filled story that they are trying to tell is a little different to the one that Michael is hoping to offer them. And so it's through both the careful assembly of the show that's going to go on tour and the interviewing of Michael for this MTV documentary that we gain insights into his past, that we glimpse back onto what has brought him to this point in his career. We see his childhood as a performer, we see the Jackson 5, we see his relationship with his parents as well as their relationship with each other. There is a lot of time spent on the sort of turbulent relationship with his father. All of this has been very well documented elsewhere, but that essentially is how the show works. We are seeing these rehearsals happening for the upcoming tour, very much in this one little chapter of his history while acknowledging the impact of everything that's happened beforehand. And the music is used in a few different ways on this scale of being more and less diegetic, that is to say, where songs are actually being performed as songs. Occasionally, numbers will be performed in a rehearsal or performance context. Occasionally, that will happen in flashbacks from the past as well. On other occasions, songs are used where their lyrics are allowed to invoke a little greater meaning. Sometimes that is adapted to be quite specific to the moment. On other occasions, just sort of the vibe of the thing captures the feel of what's happening in the narrative. And to that end, not everything is performed by Michael. I should also say that while Myles Frost plays MJ in the present, the MJ who is rehearsing for this tour and withstanding a lot of professional stress, and who we see doing all of this fantastic dance and singing and performing, other actors also share the role of Michael Jackson, because Mitch Shangaja plays him in the past, sort of from adolescence up to really adulthood, and multiple actors share the role of very young Michael when he's depicted as a child. And visually, it's a pretty grand production, directed and choreographed by Christopher Wheeldon, with visual design elements by Paul Tazewell and Derek McLean, and technical design elements from Natasha Katz and Gareth Owen. The show could be characterized pretty accurately for its big dance moments. We have a lot of sort of breathtaking scene changes where this rehearsal space completely transforms into something else, often in a split second seemingly. But predominantly the focus is on Michael and his process, which in and of itself invites a little bit of criticism. So let me tell you what I thought about the show, what I liked about it, and what its challenges are. Now, context is always important in these reviews, right? And if you are a Michael Jackson fan, this is just about the perfect show for you, because it delivers that, and it delivers him, and it delivers the music really, really well. And in terms of crowd pleasing, I mean, it's off the charts. Some of these numbers and the choreography and the way that everything is built and gradually comes together, and the visuals of it all, I mean, it's show-stopping. It's this really hard-hitting, like I said, crowd-pleasing, fantastic night of all singing, all dancing live entertainment. And if this was just a concert tour, then that might be fine, but there is also the book musical of it all to consider. Now, obviously, the music is pre-written music that has been arranged and orchestrated here. That work has been done by Jason Michael Webb and David Holstenberg, and there is also a script tying this all together from celebrated playwright Lynn Nottage. A script which I'm not readily wanting to criticize, because I think the biggest problem with this show is the scope of the thing. We are set in this really specific time period for really specific reasons, and we can only look backwards into the past for those same specific reasons, because this is happening in the run-up to the Dangerous Tour, and we are moved forwards in time with this sense of momentum. The Dangerous Tour is looming, it's coming, we have to get ready for it, we're rehearsing, it's approaching, we don't have enough time, this is the last rehearsal. At all points they are utilising this upcoming tour commencement as a source of tension. They are using that dramatically. They want to feel the sense of us hurtling forwards in time, but in 1993, the Dangerous Tour is underway, and this is when the first major allegations begin to come to light. So we don't want to look too far into the future, because we don't want to address this, because this show is happening with the permission, I guess, of Michael Jackson's estate and the family, and access to his work and a depiction of his life would not be made available to theatre makers who were going to tell that kind of a story. The whole thing has to be presented with a certain amount of kindness and deference. And so we don't travel far enough forwards in the future for those allegations to come to light. Any audience member with an awareness of the timeline of it all may feel sort of the sense of that approaching, but we don't actually get there. There is the briefest, and I'm talking like blink and you will miss it, nods to a family that Michael is taking on tour with him. At this same time, he has been inviting families and children to stay on Neverland Ranch where he lives, this being a major component of what will then surface as allegations and incriminating lawsuits. But again, the show doesn't want to talk about all of that. However, it offers us this Trojan horse of conversations in which he addresses the controversies of the time. Now, because this is 1992, those are slightly different controversies. Does he sleep in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber? Does he bleach his skin? And it provides him with these things, him as a character, it provides him with these opportunities to shoot down all of those other rumours, all of that other media speculation, with explanations, with things that he can offer, because those aren't as hard to explain away as certain other behaviours that will get talked about in the coming months. And you can't help but feel as though it does this to give a sense of, see, look, there is an explanation for all of it. He does talk about all of these things, but we don't actually get to the really big question that a lot of people will be wondering. And the way in which these conversations are leveraged, because he is not forthcoming with any personal revelations about himself initially, either to the other characters on stage or really to the audience. He's a very guarded individual, is by using this MTV documentary crew and by using this female sort of an antagonist. She is set up to be the villain who is like filming him and his crew without their permission, without them realizing that their mics are still hot, capturing their stress, capturing him taking pills during the rehearsal process, and constantly pressing for more opportunities to speak to him and asking him about topics that he has said he does not want to talk about. All of which sets her up to look like this nasty villain taking advantage of a struggling artist, and it sets him up to look like a victim of media desperation. So not only does the character of Michael Jackson not get subjected to the more substantial 1993 allegations, but he is very much framed here to look like the victim, to look like a tortured artist, to look like this musical and dance genius who did nothing wrong. And that's not my only issue with the book. I have other issues with this show beyond a sort of a moral objection, because this means we spend our entire time either in that present moment or looking backwards. It is often retrospective, and I'm not a fan of these retrospective jukebox musicals. Ain't Too Proud does a similar thing where it's narrated and saying, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this looked rough for a while, but then it was all okay. And you know it's going to be okay, because guess what? We're in the present and Michael Jackson's right there. So all of the, and then I didn't know, how it was going to go, and then this seemed rough. A, the audience already knows this story, and we already know the success that he would go on to have, so there's no tension there really. But B, he's getting ready for this hugely ambitious world tour. He has clearly attained success as an artist. So all of these retrospective scenes in which, it may or may not go his way because he's taking risks, that being the theme of all of the flashbacks from the past, I just don't really get the point of that, especially because it's not nearly as entertaining as just watching him building this tour. You wouldn't think that would be great fodder for a stage musical, but it really is. So having talked about my issues with the book, here is where the show shines, which is building these numbers. There is a sequence at the beginning of the second act that I just fell in love with, because he enters this stage quietly, just in a spotlight, and he is slowly getting ready. He's putting on the glove and he's putting on the hat and he does a little bit of a moonwalk, and he calls onto the stage all of his dance heroes and inspirations. We have the Nicholas brothers, we have Fred Astaire, we have Bob Fosse for your musical theatre fans. And what I love about this next sequence is you then see each of them dancing, and he copies what they are doing, but not in an exact mimesis, not in an exact mimicry. Instead, what he does is he filters that choreography through his own personal interpretation. So you can then see immediately and in real time how each of those historic dancers, choreographers inspired his style, and you can immediately be like, oh yeah, he is kind of doing Fred Astaire stuff, but in a way that we would now always see as Michael Jackson. And then by the time you get to Fosse, the whole thing builds up, and I think they do Smooth Criminal. I think this is when that number happens. But what I love about this, and this is Christopher Wheeldon's direction and choreography, is that it builds these numbers. We don't just hit go and then do them. Everything comes together, brings in all of these different elements, and it earns its huge payoff. It also, with almost no words, tells us far more about Michael's artistic process, tells us far more about his history as a performer, just using those different dance moments. That's a much more interesting story. And it's more effective storytelling. Seeing that and getting to literally understand how he crafted his iconic dance style by watching it happen before our eyes is much better than a scene in which he tells someone about his inspirations. The choreography throughout is really quite spectacular. Not only are we capturing that very particular Michael Jackson style, but there's a number at the end of the first act. And again, the attention to detail is so meticulously crafted, and the way that it builds and the way it comes together from this staged scene, which is a press conference, that very steadily and measuredly turns into a full production number, and this sort of a podium that he's standing behind becomes a table that then gets turned and rotated multiple ways to allow us to do cool things over it. Another gauze curtain is brought down behind him so that they can project things onto that to give the sense of a sort of a shattered depth. The visuals are great, and again, without using words, we gain more of an insight into his psyche and into his mind, because this isn't something that we're really able to penetrate theatrically for most of the show. If he's guarded to the other characters on stage who are trying to get personal information and backstory out of him, he's just as guarded to the audience. We're offered breadcrumbs about his personal motivations when it comes to this tour, because he is presented as this historically accurate, enigmatic and mysterious figure. Though an outgoing and charismatic performer, he is personally very shy and very soft-spoken. In terms of other numbers that were a highlight, I really liked the way that Thriller was incorporated into the show. I don't think they did the iconic Thriller choreography. I'm guessing they don't have the rights to the choreography, and that this is a little bit different to having the rights to the music, because it was still fantastic choreography, but it wasn't the Thriller stuff that you may have been expecting. And this number is very much anticipated by the audience, not only because it's one of the favourite Michael Jackson songs, but also because it's already been mentioned, and sort of how the success of that changed the trajectory of his career. That's been talked about earlier in the show, so by the time that we finally get Thriller, it's very exciting. But it isn't performed in a historical context, it isn't even performed in the context of preparing it for the tour. It comes out of a scene that focuses in the second act on his relationship with his father, and on this perhaps abusive relationship with his father. And so his father, played by Ashley Jangaja, who also plays, I want to say his tour manager, or there's some sort of creative presence, but it's the character of his father, Joe Jackson, who becomes this sort of a villainous, nefarious presence that he is singing about in the lyrics of Thriller. He is that intimidating thing lurking in the dark. It's a very powerful way of recontextualizing that song, and you get this, like, oh my gosh, this amazing set change and just a fantastic production number that the song is then performed with. Which is the right choice, I think, because even after like repositioning the song and infusing it with this level of theatrical meaning and talking about his relationship with his father, the audience still needs you to do Thriller as anticipated, and you can't like completely rearrange the whole song. You still need to deliver a big song and dance number with Thriller, and that's what we got. The other one that I think got the most applause was Starting Something, and it was just the full-out choreography, I think, and just the intensity of the whole thing, and Myles' performance, and that was just a really well done number. And the show has plenty of them. That's the thing. It does the song and dance thing really, really well. It is thoroughly produced. It is really well brought to the stage creatively. It is just let down by this slightly by the numbers narrative and by a very limiting, narrow scope. Oh, there is one more thing I want to tell you that I really loved, and then I promise we're going to talk about the performances. So, He talks a lot about wanting a toaster lift, one that will shoot him up from beneath the stage, and then he will land and he will just have suddenly appeared. And we see these a lot now on concert tours, but for the time, I guess it was a big deal. Anyway, this particular contraption, this toaster lift, gets mentioned so many times throughout the show that by the interval I was calling it Chekhov's toaster lift, where it becomes obvious that it's going to make an appearance at some point. And sure enough, it happens at the beginning of the show's curtain call, or I guess right at the end of the show before the curtain call, implying the beginning of the Dangerous World Tour. But what would already have been a really cool entrance moment of the performer playing MJ flying up through the stage and then landing before everyone's eyes with a big sound cue, then is even more exciting because it's been so anticipated, because it's been so talked about. And that's the power of Chekhov's gun, or in this case, Chekhov's toaster lift. But also, I think that's a tribute to this direction from Christopher Wheeldon, because a lesser Michael Jackson musical may start that way. You may begin with like lights, boom, boom, Michael Jackson appears on stage, and then we do a bunch of opening numbers. And this one starts in a way that's much softer. We have performers gradually coming onto stage, and we have a tour manager coming out saying like 10 minutes till Michael, 3 minutes till Michael. And this is both for, you know, the dancers on his tour in character, but it's also for the audience to convey that the show is about to be happening. And this makes everyone in the room who loves Michael Jackson very, very excited. But because this is a show about the building of this tour, I like that we have this rehearsal room setting to begin with, and it then builds to something more elaborate and more produced by the end of the thing. Say what you will about the real life Michael Jackson, a towering performer and like hugely challenging to impersonate. And Myles Frost does an incredible job here. The dancing, oh my gosh, the execution of this choreography, the fluidity of it, the energy levels, the stamina, the fact that he can do all of that throughout the show without looking for a second fatigued. And it's so familiar, it's so characteristically Michael Jackson. My jaw was on the floor of the stalls and I was sat in the dress circle, so that's a long way for my jaw to go. Every time he would drop into this sort of like a wide stance, demi-plie kind of a thing, and then just like immediately bring his feet back together. Obviously the moonwalking, obviously the jumping onto his toes on point thing that he's doing in the poster artwork. And it's these perhaps Fosse-inspired isolations where his torso and his upper frame is remaining very still and the legs are doing these fluid side-to-side things and backwards and forward things. I mean, it's just marvelous to watch. And then add the layer of characterization and performance on top of all of that. Add on the voice and the impression of Michael's speaking voice and persona, and then add on the vocal delivery, because Michael Jackson was also a hugely celebrated vocalist as well as a dancer. That Myles Frost gets all of this so right and does so with such a profound sensitivity and vulnerability while also being sort of enigmatic is just fascinating, I think. Surely one of the most challenging roles for a leading man in musical theatre right now. And Mitchell Jangaja also does a fantastic job as the younger Michael Jackson, for giving you that same kind of dynamic performance, for giving you the vocals, for giving you the dance, and a slightly more adolescent, slightly more outspoken quality. He is the Michael who hasn't yet been damaged in quite so many ways, who hasn't become as reserved, as shy, and I like being able to see the contrast between the two, but then also being able to see the similarities in the way in which they've clearly studied the performances. Then you have Mitchell's older brother Ashley Jangaja as Joe Jackson and also Rob, the tour manager, and another performance with brilliant duality where he is this nurturing figure who is trying to reassure Michael, who is trying to cater to his artistic sensibilities, maybe pandering to him a little bit, versus playing his father in these imagined sequences or in these memories when he is intimidating and authoritative and demanding and abusive. He has a scene with Mitchell as Michael in the second act that is very powerfully performed by the two of them. Now, Philippa Stefani plays Rachel, who is trying to get an angle for this documentary that's being filmed about the rehearsal process, and she is kind of this antagonist character. Now, Philippa has given one of the greatest performances I've ever seen on stage when she played Mimi in the last UK tour of Rent. I think she's phenomenal. I think she needs more substantial parts to work with because she doesn't get a lot of great material here as Rachel. She exists to provide a function within the plot and doesn't have much depth as a character by herself. Like, she is clearly affected by her experience with Michael, and she clearly portrays a certain amount of guilt, but also ambition and determination, and she has her own personal misgivings about the things that she is witnessing. At the same time, if she were written to be a stronger character and a stronger presence throughout the show, maybe we would be able to have some of those more challenging conversations. I keep thinking of like an Evita, and I don't want to compare Michael Jackson and Eva Peron, but at the very least they were both, you know, historically complicated characters that evoked different feelings from people, and Evita has this challenger in the form of its narrator, in the form of Shay. And MJ doesn't really do us, the audience in 2024, the dignity of separating it from the Michael of it all. Instead, it introduces her, like I said before, to force him into a position of looking like a victim. It's a little bit emotionally manipulative, honestly, and it's not honest storytelling. Finally, I must mention another member of this ensemble cast, Phoebe Edwards, who plays, among other roles, Michael Jackson's mother, and she has a great voice. But what I really want to talk about is the dance talent of this ensemble. My God, these ensemble dancers. Those choreography moments are stellar, are probably the best dance sequences of that style that you are going to see in the West End right now. The numbers are fierce and so full out in the delivery. It is absolutely breathtaking work from every single dancer on that stage. So good. So if you're wondering if you should go and see MJ the Musical, I should acknowledge that I have heard a lot of things about disruptive audiences at this particular show, and I was very lucky to go on press night where it was a very different kind of an audience. If that sounds like something that you might be wary of, I would personally avoid this show on a Friday or a Saturday night, maybe consider a matinee, although knowing the British public, that might not stop anyone from drinking in the afternoon. But needless to say, if you enjoy Michael Jackson as an artist, you are going to love this show. I didn't get to see Thriller live, but by all accounts, this seems to be a more substantial biopic show about his life that depicts him a lot more than Thriller Live was able to. And the dancing is undeniably fantastic. The music is undeniably fantastic. So much about how this show has been brought together is really impressive. But much like with anything Michael Jackson, there is always going to be this other side of the thing. In any case, those have been all of my thoughts about MJ the Musical. Like I said, if you have seen this already in the West End on Broadway, let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. Thank you so much for watching this new video review. I hope that you've enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my theatre-themed YouTube channel for more reviews of all your favourite West End and Broadway shows coming very soon. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day.
For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey, thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!